Today I'm going to be talking about Steph Curry. Born in Akron, Ohio, Steph has become one of the greatest players to ever grace the hardwood floor. With his elite shooting ability, Steph has amassed one of the most impressive collections of accolades in NBA history. Steph added to this collection just a few months ago when he beat the Celtics in the NBA Finals to win his fourth ring in just 7 years. More importantly, winning that missing Finals MVP and cementing himself as one of the greatest players to ever live. Due to this, he's been one of the hottest names in basketball recently, with the media generating a lot of talk around Curry, with the frequent question of, is Curry top 10 all time?
Me, Steph Curry has to be in the top 10, based on his resume.
Is Steph Curry a top 10 player? You think a fourth title puts him in your company? I'm talking top 10 all time.
Where does Steph Curry rank all time?
He's in the top 10, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now,
in case you need a reminding of how great Curry really is, let me read his resume to you. He's an 8-time All-Star, an 8-time All-NBA player, a 2-time scoring champion, a 1-time steal champion, a 2-time MVP, which he won back-to-back, and the only person ever to win a unanimous MVP, with one of the greatest seasons we have ever seen in 2016. He's also a 4-time champion and recent Finals MVP. Now that may sound impressive, however let me put into perspective how impressive it really is. Since Curry's debut in 2009, only 3 players have won multiple MVPs as well as a championship: Stephen Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and LeBron James. Due to Curry's incredible resume, as well as the moments to match it, I don't think it's really much of a conversation at this point. Curry is undeniably a top 10 player of all time. Due to this, I decided talking about Curry's all-time ranking would not make for a very interesting video. Therefore, I decided to look even deeper into Curry's career, specifically his greatest ability, his shooting. And a word that kept popping up over and over again was influence. Now, influence is a very hard thing to measure, especially in the terms of the NBA. However, after doing further research, I realised it's not Curry's accolades that sets him apart from NBA history, it's his unmatched influence on the game of basketball. Now at first listen, that may sound a little crazy, especially with the sheer number of influential players throughout the last 60 years of the league. For example, Bill Russell in the 60s, Kareem and Oscar in the 70s, Magic and Bird in the 80s, Jordan in the 90s, Iverson, Kobe and Bron in the 2000s. However, none of them quite come close to Steph Curry. I truly believe Steph Curry is the most influential basketball player to ever live, and I'm gonna show you why. Initially, to show his influence, I was gonna compare the number of threes teams attempted per game before and after Curry joined the league. There was definitely a difference, with attempts increasing by 15 per game between Curry's debut and now, compared to attempts only increasing by 14 a game in the 30 years prior to Curry's debut. However, I decided that Curry was not the only culprit for this, as Mike D'Antoni with the Suns and Rockets using the 7-second or less rule definitely contributed to this as well. That's when I decided to do some more digging, and that's when I found that Curry's real influence is his ability to make 3-point shooters into superstars. Prior to Curry's debut, all the greatest shooters in the league were seen as good role players, such as Kyle Korver, JJ Redick, Steve Kerr, and Mike Miller. Therefore, I came up with a criteria to test this theory. I went all the way back to the 1979-80 season and counted every time a player made 200 threes as well as making an All-NBA team in the same season. Now, 200 threes may not seem like a lot, however it is something only elite and primarily 3-point shooters can do. For example, KD, Melo, Kobe, Kyrie and LeBron have all never hit 200 threes in a season, despite all having good 3-point shooting seasons as well as being considered as good 3-point shooters. Now what I found actually really surprised me. Between 1979 and 2009, a player hit 200 threes while making an All-NBA team in the same season only 10 times in 30 years, averaging out to once every 3 years. It didn't happen once in the 80s and only happened 3 times in the 90s. Mitch Richmond achieved it in back-to-back years in 96 and 97, and Glenn Rice achieved it into 97 as well. What surprised me was that Reggie Miller not once achieved this feat. Also interestingly, when the NBA moved the three-point line up to 22 feet in the 1994-95 season, no one managed to achieve this feat even then. As I moved into the 2000s, there were 7 times it occurred. First by one of the greatest shooters of all time, Ray Allen, in 2001, then followed by Paul Pierce in 2002, before Ray would then do it again in 2005. Now, one of the most underrated players in the 2000s, Peja Stojakovic, did it in 2004, and then Gilbert Arenas showed how ahead of his time he really was, as he almost achieved the feat 3 years on the bounce when he did it in 2005 and 2007, and only missed the mark by 1 free, hitting 199 in 2006. This just shows how elite he really was at his peak. Therefore, that totals up to 10 players in 30 years. Now we move on to after 2009. From 2009 onwards and past Curry's debut, things changed dramatically. The first person to do it was fitting, as it was Steph Curry in his breakout year in 2014. Now listen to this. Curry would then go on to do it in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21 and 22, a whopping 8 times, already almost equaling the amount in the 30 years prior. Not only that, Damian Lillard would also do it in 2014, 16, 18, 19, 20 and 21, along with Harden doing it in 2015, 17, 18, 19 and 20. Paul George would also do it on 3 occasions in 2016, 18 and 19. Klay Thompson would do it in back-to-back years at the height of the Warriors' powers in 2015 and 16. Isaiah Thomas would do it in one of the most enjoyable individual seasons from a player ever in 2017. However, arguably the most impressive person to do so was Russell Westbrook in his historic MVP run in 2017. As beforehand, Russ averaged only 63 threes made a season, with only making 100 threes once before, never mind 200. Kyle Lowry also surprised me, as he did it in 2016, same as Kemba with his electric season in 2019. Then most recently, this season alone, Luka, Tatum and Trae Young all achieved this feat for the first time. Now, these 3 players in particular will only continue to rack up seasons with 200 threes in all NBA teams, as it is their play style to hit a lot of threes. This means that in the 13 years since Curry's debut, there have been 32 times a player has made 200 threes and an All-NBA team, compared to the only 10 in the 30 years before. Moreover, the interesting thing to note as well is that there are multiple young stars in the league that will undoubtedly be on this list at some point in their careers, such as Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball and Donovan Mitchell, just showing the impact Curry has made on the modern game. As if it wasn't enough, I wanted to really emphasize the influence of Steph Curry, so I counted even more statistics. This time round, I counted the number of times players hit 200 threes in a season in general from 1979 to 2022. Similarly to the last statistic, things drastically changed after Steph's debut. In order to properly demonstrate this to you, I decided to make a graph. So as you can see, this graph shows the amount of times a player hit 200 threes in the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, and after Curry's debut in 2009. And as you can see, there are huge discrepancies in the data. As you can see, it didn't even happen once in the 80s and only happened 10 times in the 90s. It would then happen 18 more times, taking the total to 28 throughout the 2000s, showing that the game was going in a slow but sure path to shooting more threes. However, Curry undeniably accelerated this, as between his debut and now, this feat has happened 94 more times, showing the real influence Curry has had on the game since his debut in 2009. To further demonstrate how impressive that really is, there were 122 separate occasions where a player made 200 threes or more in a season. 28 of them happened before Curry's debut in 2009, and a whopping 94 happened after his debut, 80% of all the seasons. Stats and case studies like I've presented in today's video are exactly why I think Curry is the most influential player of all time. Even more so, the drastic changes he's made on the game are exactly why I think it's not even particularly close. With all that being said, despite your opinion on him, Steph Curry is an absolute legend of the game of basketball and an all-round cultural icon of the 2010s. He's been one of the most enjoyable athletes I've ever been able to watch, and he's undoubtedly an all-time great, and in my opinion, the most influential basketballer to ever live. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and see you next time.